Gaming at 1440p is more popular than ever, with a noticeable visual improvement over 1080p, and without the large performance overhead of 4K gaming, it strikes the perfect balance. But choosing the right GPU for this resolution can be tricky. You want a card that performs well in all the latest titles, but crucially has enough horsepower for 1440p gaming now and into the future without breaking the bank. Let's do this. The Cooler Master GM34CWQ2 is a 34-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor set on a 1500R curve with a sharp 3440 by 1440 resolution. The quantum dot panel is rich and vibrant, while the stock 165Hz refresh rate can be overclocked up to 180Hz for extra performance. AMD FreeSync Premium support, a 0.5 millisecond response time, and 4000:1 contrast ratio make this monitor both practical and a panel that looks the part. Learn more at the first links in the description below. The first question you're probably asking is, how much money do I need to spend to get a card that's good enough for 1440p? And the answer lies in the middle of our performance graphs. Simply put, the cards at the top end are overpowered for this resolution and better suited to gaming at 4K. The cards at the bottom of the graph arguably don't quite offer up enough performance and are better suited to 1080p. As you turn the resolution up, the frame rate is going to fall. Why? Because the higher resolution games require more pixels to be rendered, giving the GPU less capacity to render out a higher number of frames. Now, to easily illustrate this point, I'm actually going to get out my calculator, and I promise this is the last time maths will appear in the video today. Now, if I multiply 1920 by 1080, that gives me just over 2 million. Now, that's the number of pixels that the GPU needs to render at 1080p. If I multiply 2560 by 1440, you can see the pixel count jumps up to 3.6 million. That's an increase of around about 75%, meaning the GPU's got to work nearly twice as hard to achieve the same frame rate. Now, if I do 4K, which is 3840 by 2160, you can see the pixels jump up to a staggering 8.3 million. Now, that shows you how much easier 1440p actually is to render out than 4K, and why some of the cards drop off so much at this top resolution. Now, you might think that the middle of the graph is arguably slightly overkill, and that in some titles where we're seeing cards achieve over 100 FPS, that you don't really need that much frame rate to have a playable experience. The key though is making sure you have a GPU that is good enough for now and into the future. I don't want to recommend to you guys a 1440p GPU that's kind of okay now and then next year is a complete waste of time. And that brings me on to my next point, VRAM. Now, looking at how much memory your graphics card needs helps us to rule out candidates that just aren't suitable for 1440p gaming. Now, you'll see a lot of criticism around cards like the 4060, 60 Ti and RX 7600 because they only have 8 gigs of video memory. And while this is fine at 1080p, you can see in our testing at 1440p, VRAM usage typically exceeds this amount and not irregularly. Now, your VRAM acts as a buffer, a high-speed buffer that the GPU can read data from and render out pixels to your screen. And as you crank the texture and the graphics settings up, the VRAM requirement becomes higher. Simply put, the GPU chip and the processing power in modern GPUs is actually often too quick for the amount of VRAM that some of these cards are shipping with. For that reason, I'll only be recommending cards today that have at least 12 gigabytes of video memory. So James, I get the context. Where does this leave us? And what cards are you suggesting are best for 1440p gaming? Now, on the AMD side, it ranges right from the 7700 XT through to the 7800 XT and 7900 GRE. These cards start at $399 and range up to the $550 price point. For fancy coolers like the Power Color Hellhound, you're going to pay a bit more than that, but as far as the MSRPs for the actual GPUs go, that's where we're looking. On the NVIDIA side, you're going to range right from the 4070 on the bottom end, that starts at $550, right the way up to the 4070 Ti Super, which comes in at an arguably eye-watering $799. Now let's work, shall we, from the cheapest to the most expensive, and as we go, look at whether AMD or NVIDIA is the better option at 1440p. Now, the 7700 XT is one of my favorite GPUs, but let me preface it by saying that this is the entry-level card at 1440p, and in some instances, it is better suited for 1080p gaming. I know that's a hard truth, and I don't want to disappoint anybody, but if you want a 1440p card for now and many many years to come, this isn't what I would buy. The reason I'm recommending it though is because right now the 1440p performance is very good. Let's start with cost per frame. This looks at the MSRP of each of the available GPUs and the performance with identical settings at Hogwarts Legacy 1440p. The 7700 XT sits at the bottom of the graph, and obviously lower is better because this is about how much money you have to spend per FPS. At $4.34 per frame, this card achieved over 90 frames per second in Hogwarts at 1440p. Now the reason that this card's done so well is Hogwarts is very VRAM intensive, and 12GB is just about enough to satisfy that game's requirements. That's what really hurts the 4060 and 4060 Ti, cards that are cheaper and would perform well but don't have enough VRAM to make it work. In games like Starfield, the card performs well too with 74 FPS, while in Apex it ranges up to about 175. And these results are mirrored across a lot of the titles we looked at with this GPU. But there are games where it does struggle, and Cyberpunk's a good example. With ray tracing and FSR disabled, the card does okay, rasterization wise about 90 frames per second. But turn on ray tracing and AMD's answer to DLSS, which is their FSR tech, and the game becomes, well, a bit of a slideshow really. 12 gigs of VRAM's enough now. I think the rate we're seeing, games require more and more video memory, means 16 gigs is what I'd prefer in the future. But this, if you're looking for a card that's great for 1440p medium to high settings, this is what I'd go for. And for the price, I think it's fantastic value for money. Spend a bit more though, and you can see where the extra performance starts to come in. The 7800 XT costs a little bit more than the 7700 XT. There was a $50 MSRP difference at launch. That's now got bigger as the 7700 XT has become cheaper, but this is still at $499 or thereabouts good value. And it's only beat out by its 7600 little brother, which is more of a 1080p GPU, and very marginally by the 7900 GRE. The bump in performance over the 7700 XT also helps where this card doesn't have quite enough power. The extra 10 or 15 FPS in Starfield, an extra 12 to 15% performance across the board makes the 7800 XT very compelling. It's a pretty power efficient GPU, comes in a range of different cooler models, and as far as 1440p gaming goes, at a price that doesn't break the bank but minimises sacrifices, this is what I'd recommend you pick up. Moving up the price echelons a little bit more, and this is where things get a bit interesting, as the 7900 GRE and AMD's RTX 4070 trade blows at a very similar price point. Now the first thing that strikes me is the size difference between these cards. This is the Founders Edition, this is the Asus TUF. I think still though shows how incredibly power efficient these NVIDIA Ada Lovelace cards are. That's one thing about 40 series that NVIDIA have not had enough credit for. So power efficient. These cards are fairly similar when it comes to performance, but have their distinct advantages and disadvantages. As you can see from our cost per frame analysis, again in Apex Legends and Hogwarts Legacy, the 7900 GRE technically provides a lower cost per frame and thus better value for money. But our cost per frame analysis isn't perfect. Hang on a minute, a tech YouTuber's just said his testing is flawed. Hold on. Before you cancel me and the channel, let me explain. Now, both of these games are more geared towards rasterization, and our settings used in these titles, again, mirror that. The 4070 is slower than the GRE when it comes to straight rasterization. That is gaming power without ray tracing, without DLSS, without FSR, without frame generation, without any of that stuff. But enable that and the 4070 has an ace up its sleeve. The 4070's ray tracing performance is better. DLSS 3 is better. Frame generation on NVIDIA is, you guessed it, better. Games like Cyberpunk, this is the card you want. Alan Wake 2 with ray tracing on, this is the GPU you're going to want to buy. Overall feature set, this is the better option. The thing that lets it down, and this is a common pattern with NVIDIA GPUs across the whole of the 40 series, VRAM. This has 16 gigs, this has 12. You remember that 7700 XT from a minute ago that I said didn't quite have enough VRAM really for the long term? The 4070 has exactly the same problem. Which of these two GPUs should you buy? That's up to what you want. If ray tracing, DLSS, frame gen are important, buy the NVIDIA card. If they're not, and you want straight rasterization, more VRAM, and arguably slightly better value for money, the GRE is the card you should buy. Moving up the price echelons a little bit more, and you can see this is where NVIDIA, well, really they command the market. And not necessarily because they're better than AMD's more expensive options, but because they're just more expensive. The first of those cards is the 4070 Super. Now the 4070 Super basically is a 4070 with a few improvements and a higher price point. Super across the board added roughly 10% extra performance. That wasn't the case with every GPU, but generally speaking, that was the way it went. NVIDIA didn't add any more VRAM, so it still has the same problem as the 4070. 4070, the performance at 1440p across the board is good. In Starfield, the card achieved 88 FPS at 1440p high, while in Hogwarts Legacy, we broke through the 100 FPS barrier. Great to see the card pulling in triple digits. Again, very small and power efficient, especially compared to some of the bigger AMD GPUs, and I like that NVIDIA include that PCI Gen 5 cable. For me though, the winner when it comes to 1440p GPUs for NVIDIA is this, the 4070 Ti Super. Now, to be clear, this is the most expensive GPU in the roundup, and if cost per frame, value for money is what you're looking for, don't buy this GPU. However, there are some key selling points. It's ace at 1440p, high and ultra across the board, amazing. They fixed the VRAM by adding an extra 4GB over the original non-super variant, and it's also pretty good for 4K, something where the GRE is going to struggle a lot more. Performance in Starfield is good, performance in Apex is good, Hogwarts Legacy is good, cost per frame is, well, it's more expensive, basically. But it is cheaper than the 4080 and 4090, as well as the original non-super 70 Ti on a cost per frame basis, meaning that this is technically one of the best value GPUs you can buy on the top end of the market, especially for 1440p and a bit of 4K gaming. As for where Intel Arc is in all of this, they haven't really got any cards that are good enough for me to recommend. Good for VRAM, but not really much else yet. Hopefully that changes. Anyway, they are my favorite cards for 1440p. There's some good options there. The 7900 GRE, 7800 XT, and 7700 XT on the AMD side, with the 70 Ti Super, 70 Super, and 70 being what I'd go for when it comes to Team Green in the NVIDIA camp. Buy NVIDIA if you want a better overall feature set, better ray tracing, DLSS 3 is better than FSR 3 in my opinion, and the frame generation tech is also a little bit cleaner. AMD will catch up on the feature set front though, and the VRAM advantage that you'll find on Team Red is very compelling, as well as the fact these are often quite a piece cheaper. I'll leave latest pricing and availability down in the description below. Get subscribed to see more from me, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, adios, hasta luego.